Thank you, Anirban. So the question is, what exactly do you mean by enlightenment when you're trying to focus on the awareness? Yes? Okay, and then we cut it off? Yeah. All right, Anirban, thank you. I'll be answering your question now.
Okay, maybe I'm going to hang up now. Thank you. Okay.
Now, if we try to understand the awareness which is illumining everything else, we are again falling into the same trap of objectifying it, trying to be the one who tries to understand the one who is understanding. You'll never do that. What you can do, and what the goal of Vedanta is, when you realize yourself to be that consciousness which is illumining our minds and through our minds and bodies the external world, when you know that, this consciousness, and suppose here is the body and here is the mind, a nebulous mass above it, whatever. Here's the body.
Speak a little louder.
And here is the mind. And here is the consciousness which is shining upon the mind and through the mind into the body. Now, all we have to do is to acknowledge that we are this. Remember, the I, which is also a thought in the mind, it now refers to the mind and the body. It should refer to the pure consciousness. And not as an object, as you yourself. So you will know yourself as not the body, not the mind. It's almost impossible to express it in language, and yet when it happens, it's absolutely clear. There is no vagueness about it. As Shankaracharya puts it, Manobuddhi ahankara chittani naham. I am not, the famous hymn where he sings Chidananda Rupaha Shivoham Shivoham. I am consciousness, bliss, I am Shiva, I am Shiva. There, at the beginning, the first line is, I am not the mind, I am not the intellect, I am not even the ego sense, the I. Look at the paradox of this statement. I am not the I. Ahankara naham. I am not the intellect which is trying to understand all this. I am not that too. Then, after denying this, he says, I am not the sense organs. Nacha shrotra jivve, nacha ghrana netri. I am not the ears, not the eyes, not the sense of smell or taste. And he says, I am not the physical body or the mind made up of 5 elements. Na bhumi, na tejo, na vayu, na apo. I am not the 5 elements also. Then only he says, Chidananda Rupaha Shivoham Shivoham. I am that consciousness which pervades and enlivens this body-mind system. So that is we can call it an intuitive experience, an acknowledgement of what we are. Literally the word realization is very good. A realization of what we are. It sort of dawns upon you that what you are. Yes. The next question.
So anybody have a question here? Yeah.
There's a question.
Raise your hand and then wait.
Yeah, there's a question there. Can you take the mic to the gentleman there? Just identify yourself and then ask the question.
Yeah, Manoj from San Diego.
Yes, Manoj.
So 2 questions, Swamiji. Thank you so much. One is the role of bhakti, because to me, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa was an amazing fusion of jnana and bhakti.
Yes.
So the first question is on the role of bhakti, especially your Ishta Devata, in this process. And the second question is just a personal observation. To get really deep into this study of Vedanta, there has to be almost like a personal crisis. In other words, smooth waters doesn't make a skillful sailor.
Yes.
It's like the classic Arjuna. So I wanted your thoughts on.
True. Very good questions. Very good questions. And you would be interested to know, almost certainly this was the question, the first question about bhakti, love of God. It sort of ties into what happens next in the Kena Upanishad. You can imagine the student asking, all this is fine. What 3,000 years later human beings will call neuroscience. This is all very fine. But What about religion? What about God? What about love of God? Where is God? Where is worship of God? Where is love of God? Where is bhakti? And the answer comes. You see, our idea of God, of a primitive idea could be this guy who's almost always a male sitting in the clouds above, a guy in the sky. Or in some symbol. It could be an image, it could be a photograph or an image which you worship out there. And that's what every conventional religion conceives of God as a power, as a deity, that which created this universe. In Hinduism, you have male deities, you have female deities, God worshipped as mother. So these are different forms. And God worshipped as beyond any gender. But always, God is something, a power which created this universe, which guides it, which protects it, and it's something based on faith. So two elements you see. One is, God is something other than us, number one. Second thing is, God is something you have to believe in. Maybe one day you will see God, but till that point you have to believe in God. So the idea of God is something that you take on faith. Now with these ideas, when the person comes to the teacher says, a real shocker. In the Kena Upanishad, the very next verse, which I've gone up to that and the next one. Yad vachanabhyuditam yena vagabhyudyate tadeva brahmatvam vidhi nedam yadidam upasate. The answer is this. He says, that which speech cannot express, but which enables speech, that is God, not what you worship as this. Literal translation. That which speech cannot express. You cannot express it in speech. And yet, it is that which makes speech possible. Yad vachanabhyuditam, that which is not manifested by speech. Yena vagabhyudyate, by which speech is manifested. That is God. Tadeva brahmatvam vidhi. And he adds, the real shocking part is, that alone is God. There is no God apart from that. And it is not what you worship as an object, as this. Now what it does is, it reveals to you, it reveals to us the real nature of God which we worship in religion. Whenever we worship, whenever we have bhakti, devotion, and we worship God using a photograph, an image, a deity, it may be Shiva or Kali or Durga or Ramakrishna or Jesus or whatever, or as a formless conception, as something apart from us in a heaven, something which pervades the universe, something which creates the universe, that also is apart from us. It's an object, maybe a conception, maybe a symbol, maybe a picture, an image, whatever, as apart from us. What the Upanishad teaches us is, it is really you. Because we cannot grasp that. That was the earlier question which Anirban asked from Canada. How do we know it? You cannot know it directly. All that we can know is an object. Now, religions have done this tremendous job of inventing an entire technology which will enable you to worship the pure subject as an object. That is why, and I'm not just making this up, if you look at the mantras when you worship in Hinduism, when you worship Shiva, Kali, Vishnu, even Ramakrishna we were worshipping in the morning just before the talk. If you look at the mantras, what are you reciting? What are the prayers? Ramakrishna, when you worship, how do you worship him? Is this the man with the beard sitting in a black and white photograph? You are reciting Hridaya Kamala Madhye Rajitam Nirvikalpam, that which shines in the lotus of the heart within. Prakriti Vikriti Shunyam, entirely transcending the changes of this body, external body, changes of this body. Nityam Anandamurtim, full of bliss, shining forth through this body and mind. Are you not talking about exactly the same consciousness which we have been talking about so far? And yet we use some symbolism to enable us to go there. So what this does is, should not be misunderstood as, speaking out against bhakti. It's not against conventional religion. It explains the mystery of conventional religion to you. It tells you two things. The two common mistakes: God is something out there. No. God is what you are in your own depth. That's number one. God is not an object. And the second thing is, God is something apart from you. No. God is you yourself. If you would only, as Swami Vivekananda used to say, sometimes plaintively, if only you would know yourself as you truly are. We know ourselves as this. What they are asking you to do is know yourself as this. So that explains bhakti and the importance of bhakti. Bhakti is a wonderful technology to, a practice that you can do. Because every practice is in the objective, and you need an objective practice, even though the goal is the subjective. When in one of the verses we recite to Sri Ramakrishna, whom we worship as an avatar of God, one of the verses that we recite, there Ramakrishna is called, wait for it. You will understand it right now, because it tallies in what we have all been reading now. A strange name is used for Ramakrishna. Buddhescha Sakshi, the witness of my thoughts. The witness of my thoughts and ideas and feelings and emotions and memories, that which illumines my thoughts, feelings, emotions, memories. That is what is said about God. Then what does it mean other than this? It means exactly this. Another epithet that is used there, Yovetti sakalam nachayasya vetta. I salute that God who knows everything, whom nobody knows. You may think it's okay, poetic way of talking about God. Maybe God is hiding sort of, so he knows, he's speaking at everything, but we don't see him or her or whatever. But here you see the exact meaning, that which knows everything, but that which is not an object of knowledge for anything. So, it is the most profound explanation of bhakti, this Upanishadic. What we are trying to do here, bhakti is a most powerful aid. And here you see Shankaracharya, the greatest proponent of non-dualism. When he is asked about bhakti in Vivek Chudamani, he says, among all the aids to jnana, to knowledge, bhakti is the highest. Okay, how does that work? Bhakti is love of God, isn't it? And Shankaracharya defines bhakti as swaswarupa anusandhanam, a devoted, passionate pursuit of your own true self. That is, what is that? Oh, that's Upanishads, Vedanta. No. He says that is love of God. As the Sufi mystic said, when I searched for myself, I found God. When I searched for God, I found myself. All right, a question? Oh, there's another part to the question. Does it require a storm in your life? I think so. If you look at the lives of great saints and of the persons who have really attained God, not just theoretically, not just reading books, not just conventional religion which we practice every day once in a while, or go to a temple or a church or a mosque. Not just that. A real serious pursuit of God. And often such people start off as skeptics. Often such people start off doubting. Because they doubt because they have really got a question. You'll never doubt if you don't have a question. If religion becomes a matter of habit, of culture, I'm born into this religion, so I practice it, but I'm not really interested in it. You'll never have a doubt about it then. If you're really interested in it, does God really exist? Swami Vivekananda became Vivekananda because he started with a doubt. Can you see God? The simplest of all questions. That's what he went around asking till he met a strange man in a temple on this side of the river, of the Ganges River, who said to him directly, I have seen God and I can show him to you. All right, here's a question.
Swami, thank you for coming here, and thank you for your clarity. It's greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
You came very close to answering what I call my $64,000 spiritual question. You came right up to it, and perhaps you answered it clearly for everybody but me. So I'd like to rephrase my big question I've been in pursuit of. A radio signal you use lots of metaphors, is absolutely useless without the radio receiver. The
Yes,
set.
yes.
Hence, why is not consciousness also equally of no value once the body-mind death occurs and there's no set to receive it?
What's your name?
Ted.
All right, Ted. By the way, you should look up David Chalmers' TED Talk. Yeah. Ted's question is interesting, and the answer will be even more shocking. This is a day, just turning out to be a day for shockers. He says, the question he asked was, just like a radio signal, its atmosphere is full of electromagnetic radiation, the sky is above. So only when you have a radio receiver that it's turned into a music, into a speech or song or something like that. But by itself, it's of no use to anybody. So by itself, if consciousness is a light that shines through our body-mind system, enabling us to see, hear, speak, think, then only it becomes useful. But suppose there's no body and mind. Eventually, I suppose that will happen when the body dies. Even the mind, according to Buddhism, Jainism, Hinduism, even the mind dissolves for an enlightened person. So it's pure consciousness. Now, wouldn't that be useless? Wouldn't that be useless? I'm not going to wriggle out of this question. I'm going to answer it directly. Wait for it. In the Mandukya Upanishad, in mantra which I personally feel is the most important single passage in the entire Vedanta, the 7th mantra of the Mandukya Upanishad. They give one name for pure consciousness, Brahman. They give a name. And the name is useless. Literally non-transactional, avyavaharyam, that which does not enter into transaction. Our truest nature is truly, truly useless. But useless in the most highest spiritual term. What is use? What is transaction? What even is power? Is God powerful or useless or powerless? God, the God of religion, is imagined as the most powerful of all beings. And in Vedanta, they go one step further. The formless, qualityless Brahman, Nirguna Brahman, when they speak about it, is also conceived of as completely powerless. The existence of power also implies the existence of imperfection. What good is power? Power enables you to do things without which you would be helpless. Without power, you're helpless. With power, you are enabled to do things. But in both conditions, it means there are things which you want to do. There is something that we want to accomplish. There are ends for which we need means. And if somebody has all the means to achieve all the ends, we call it God. But imagine a step further, where it is completely perfect. There is nothing to achieve. Absolutely nothing to achieve. There's one infinity of existence, consciousness, bliss. What could that want to do or achieve? What use would it have for power? Indeed, what use would it have for use? We are looking at it from our point of view. We want things to enjoy and feel, and hence we want an instrument, a body-mind. From Brahman's point of view, this little body-mind is a terrible limitation. It's a terrible limitation. Think about it. Swami Vivekananda said, Advaita Vedanta climbs to heights where the human lungs feel like bursting. It climbs to an alien environment, to the tops of Mount Everest or K2. They are not meant for human life. So, but yes, Advaita Vedanta says that's what we really are. Yes. Right now, in the midst of this limited thing. And that's why the word used is transcend, atimuchya. When you say I transcend the car or the house, it means I exist as an independent entity apart from the house or the car. I'm not limited to the house or the car. But it does not mean I don't need to, I cannot use the house or the car. I can certainly use the house or the car. Similarly, consciousness does, in fact, can and does act through all bodies and feel and know and everything through all bodies and minds. Everything that is done is actually done by consciousness. And yet in itself, it does nothing, nor is it meant to do anything. That's the direct answer to your question. Is it useless without a body and mind? Indeed, it is. The highest conception of consciousness we have is straight away, I'll bite the bullet. It is useless. Its very name is useless. To make it useful, you need use first. You need some objectives to achieve first, and then you need the means to achieve it. And it's there. Consciousness alone. There's one part I have not mentioned here so far. We have not yet gone there. If you have followed this carefully, you will see I have divided everything into pure consciousness and everything else. Have you noticed that? I've divided everything into pure consciousness and everything else. But it goes one step further, which I have not mentioned here yet. According to them, ultimately there are not two. A material order and a spiritual and pure consciousness. Pure consciousness in the material order. Spiritual and a secular order. Not two. When there are two, it is Sankhya philosophy. The Sankhya speaks of two. What are the two? Consciousness and matter. Consciousness and on the other side, matter, energy, space, time. This is Sankhya. And Advaita, look at the word non-dual. Non-dual. It speaks of consciousness appearing as space, time, matter, energy. Energy, life, thought, everything else. Even when it appears, all of this is nothing but pure consciousness. How does it accomplish this remarkable trick? So the explanation, of course, Advaita has only one explanation. They call it Maya. Because of Maya, on the screen of existence, consciousness, bliss, which we are, appears this universe. And what appears on the screen cannot be anything apart from the screen. Though it looks different, though our bodies and minds seem something illumined. We have the light metaphor. It doesn't work after a while. Light is something different and the table is something different. The light is illumining the table. The table exists quite well, happily without the light. But this metaphor works only because, if you really push the metaphor and ask the question, light can illumine the table only because, follow this, I'm really going deep now. Light can illumine the table only because light is also material, the table is also material. Ultimately. But if consciousness and matter are so different, how can consciousness interact with the mind? Spirit and matter, how can they interact? Even right now, my thoughts need my body to interact with the world. My thoughts cannot directly, I cannot levitate this pen on the table directly without my body. So I need physical matter to interact with physical matter. And something so different from mind and matter called consciousness, which you're speaking about like this, as a pure subject, as opposed to the entire objective universe. How does it interact with the objective universe? And Shankaracharya says, in one sentence, in the introduction to Brahma Sutras, it's called the Brahma Sutra Bhashya, introduction. In the introduction, the first sentence, he says, they do not interact. Consciousness and this universe do not interact. They cannot. And yet they appear to interact. I'm just translating directly what he says. Two things do not interact, yet they appear to interact. If something is not possible, yet it appears, it must be false. We are making a mistake. If something is not possible, and yet it appears to be like that, then it must be false. There is no snake in the rope, yet it looks like a snake, then the snake must be false. There is no water in the mirage, yet it looks like water, the mirage. It must be false. It cannot be real water then. What is not there, appears there, cannot be real. And hence he says, it is consciousness alone through some agency of maybe its own potency, appearing as the world and appearing to interact with the world which it itself projects. There is nothing in this world other than Brahman, existence, consciousness, bliss. Okay.
Maharaj, can I ask a
Yeah.
relative follow-up?
Yeah.
Just to what you just said. Just wait for the mic, please.
Just identify yourself.
Yes, I'm Abai from San Diego. So according to where you just, the rarefied peaks that you just took us to, your earlier argument about the Kena Upanishad about matter minus consciousness is insentient is false.
Yes.
Because there's consciousness pervades
Yes.
every aspect of reality.
Correct. So here is he's really caught on to it. In Advaita Vedanta, it is in two movements. First movement is you need to step back from the body and mind and appreciate yourself as existence, consciousness, bliss. That's one. You have to go away. The second movement is you have to come back in and see that you yourself as existence, consciousness, bliss are this universe. Then only Advaita is complete. If you just step back and see yourself as pure consciousness, then you have two things, pure consciousness and everything else. Pure consciousness and everything else. When you step back in, you see the pure consciousness alone is everything. Sri Ramakrishna explained it beautifully. So his simple language, he says, when you enter the house through the door, then you leave the door behind, you leave the staircase behind, you leave the first floor and the second floor and climb to the roof of the house, and then you see what the roof is made of, the bricks and the mortar and the cement, the first floor and the second floor and the staircase and the door, all of them are made of the same wood and mortar and bricks and cement. Now that's the story. What does it mean? As you go through the neti, not this, not this, not this, and you reach the reality which cannot be expressed in language, you find that reality. Again, you look back upon what you had left behind. You see all of that, we can use poetic language, is just a shining forth of that reality. That's how they put it. That's how you achieve non-duality. Before that, you still have duality. This world we experience, objective world of matter and energy and living beings and all our struggles herein, is nothing other than Brahman. It is not pantheism. God has not become the world. Rather, what they are saying is the world is not, God alone is. Swami Vivekananda, one of his disciples, a young American woman, Mary Hale, she wrote a poem to Swami Vivekananda saying that I have understood what you taught. All is God. And Swami Vivekananda wrote a poem back from India to her. I have never taught such unmeaning doctrine as all is God. Such strange doctrine that all is God. I never taught that. Mary Hale was surprised, but that's all you said. Sometimes you even use those words. Now you're denying it. Swami Vivekananda wrote back saying that I never taught that. What I have taught is the God alone is, the all is not. It's like Wittgenstein, the famous philosopher. So he wouldn't have a prescribed thing, the reading, which you read and come to class and he will talk about that. No, he will come to class and he will really create philosophy there. He'll stand there and think. And what he thinks he will speak. And I've read the description of those classrooms in Cambridge in the 1940s, 50s. So people used to sit, with open notebooks, waiting for those precious words to drop from his lips. And he would have the most agonizing time because all that he's doing is new philosophy. He's creating it right there. And often, as you can expect, he would contradict himself. He'd say something today and something else. So one of the students decided to catch him out on that. So literally wrote down what he had said once. And the next day, he said, Professor, did you mean this? And of course, Wittgenstein immediately would say, no, you have not understood. I do not mean that. He said, but Professor, this is exactly what you said. And then Wittgenstein was not at all fazed. He said, yes, but you do not mean what I meant when I said that. And it's so true. When I say I am Brahman and Vivekananda says I am Brahman, we mean entirely different things. All right, is a question?
I have a question.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Manju, and I just follow up on this
Just
one.
bring the microphone close to you.
Yeah.
so everyone says it.
So I just want to know, when you say consciousness is all consciousness, pure consciousness, is it like separate for each person, or is it like after the body is not there?
Beautiful question, Manju. Manju has a very good question. Are there separate consciousness or is it one consciousness? Each of us has a separate consciousness, one separate pure consciousness for all. Some of you are already saying one, but some might say there are many. Each of us is a separate consciousness. Or is it one pure consciousness shining through all these? The bodies are different, we can see. Minds are also different, we know. But there is a consciousness shining through all of them. Are they one? If it's one consciousness, then we are all one. At the deepest level, then we all become one reality. Working through different bodies and minds, posing to be different people. Or are they different? And this was the question which Arjuna had in mind. In the Gita, the 13th chapter of the Gita, Krishna says, Idam shariram kaunteya kshetramitya vidhiyate etad yo vetti kshetragyam tang prahu tadvida. He says, O Arjuna, know these bodies to be fields. Fields. And the knower of the body, inside this body, the one who feels this body, one who experiences the body, the consciousness within, know it to be the knower of the field. Right? The field and its knower. Who is the knower? You. You, the one who feels this body. One who feels that I have a tummy ache. One who feels that I understand what this guy says. One who feels that I don't understand what this guy says. The one inside, the being inside right now. He or she is called the he and the she depends on the body, the field. But that intelligent being, the conscious being within is called the knower of the field. Krishna said this to Arjuna. And Arjuna had this question. So there are so many people here. And the battlefield of Kurukshetra. And many more people. So are there many such knowers of the field, many such pure consciousnesses, many such Atma inside every one of them? All the Pandavas and Kauravas and the millions of people arrayed in that field of battle? Or is it one? That's one question. He doesn't ask it, but he had it in his mind. Because it follows from the answer which Krishna gave next. And the next question was, in that same thing, was that, all right, you have consciousness and you have all these bodies and minds. Maybe many consciousnesses, or maybe one consciousness. Now what about God? Which one is God? Or is God on this side or that side? Is it on the side of the body-mind universe or that side of the consciousnesses? So these two questions. And both of these questions Krishna answers with half a verse. The next verse, in the 13th chapter, Krishna says, Kshetragyam chapimam vidhi sarva kshetreshu bharata. In all these fields, know me alone to be the knower of the field. He has answered two questions in one half sentence. He says, in all the bodies and minds, it is one consciousness, not many. One pure consciousness. Many minds, many thoughts, many feelings, identities, bodies, but one consciousness. And that one consciousness shining through all bodies and minds, know that to be God. So that is the Vedantic idea of God. Yes, a question?
Yeah,
You have a question there?
I can shout it.
Yeah, okay.
Wait for the microphone.
Oh, wait for the microphone. We'll come back to you.
This is real short, but about 15 minutes ago, you said the goal is subjective, and I didn't understand that, because if the goal is universal, doesn't that mean it's objective?
Beautiful question. Let me answer that. Is the goal subjective or objective? Earlier, I seem to have been saying, and I was saying, I will not be like Wittgenstein. Oh, you don't mean... What I mean by subjective, you don't mean the same thing. No, but we mean the same thing. What you mean by subjective is something within us. Our real nature, the subject, as against the object which it experiences. So the goal is subjective. But now you are saying that subject alone appears as the object. The entire universe. There's only one. There's not two. Not two, non-dual. In that case, why is the goal subjective? Why is it not objective? Now remember what I said after that. There are two movements. One you need to step back and one you need to come back. Go away and come back. Realize your true nature as pure consciousness and come back again. Now, when you want to realize your nature as pure consciousness, when you want to realize Atman, the self, the true self, where will you look? Will you look in the object or in the subject? And this is actually answered by the Upanishads. In the Taittiriya Upanishad, the answer is the subject, and the Upanishad actually says that the place you have to investigate is you start with yourself. Brahman is there in the pen. Brahman is here also, the one who is experiencing the pen. Now, where do I start looking for Brahman? This is easier because it's out there. But the Upanishad tells me, if you really want to find the truth about yourself and the universe, you have to look within, not outside. You may worship outside. You may have a symbol, a form, an image, or whatever, and start your worship outside, but that will only direct you back inside. It says, as the Upanishad said, that which is inside is Brahman, not what you worship as this. This is an object. That object should point it back towards you, to your own truth. So the Taittiriya Upanishad answers your question directly. The Taittiriya Upanishad starts with one little sentence which includes the whole of Vedanta. What is that sentence? Brahma vidapnoti param. The knower of Brahman attains the highest. So three things have been mentioned here. Brahman has been mentioned, the goal. The knower of Brahman, you, has been mentioned. What you have to do is, that's also mentioned, you have to know Brahman. You have to realize Brahman. And the result has also been mentioned, attains the highest. Now the three questions which we have in our minds are, 1, what is this blessed Brahman? What is it exactly? Tell me what it is. 2, what do I have to do to know Brahman? How do I know this Brahman? 3, attains the highest. That's kind of vague. Even any preschooler will tell you that do this and you will get a prize. The first thing that the preschooler will ask you is, what is the prize? He'll ask you, what do you think, I am stupid? What will you give me? So I'll give you the best. What is the best? So what is the highest? So 3 questions. The knower of Brahman attains the ultimate, the best, the highest. I want to know, what is Brahman? How do I attain Brahman? And what is this ultimate? And the Upanishad starts by answering it. Tadeshabhyukta satyam jnanam anantam brahma. First question, what is Brahman? Straight answer. They don't beat about the bush. Straight answer. Brahman is existence, consciousness, infinity. Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam. Existence, consciousness, infinity. Wait, I don't get it. If you want to know in details, I refer you to my talk. You have to search on the internet, on YouTube, Defining God. There are 2 talks, one in Austin and one in IIT Kanpur in India. So Defining God. That's an explanation of this. Brahman is existence, consciousness, infinity. Infinite existence, infinite consciousness. What would it mean? Literally, I've word by word, I've tried to explain it there. It's a 1.5 hour talk. Just that one little sentence. But the second question is your question. How do I know Brahman? If Brahman is everything, why don't I know Brahman in this or in this? The answer to that is given. Yo Veda Nihitam Guhayam Parame Vyoman. One who realizes Brahman in his heart, within himself. So the direction is pointed out. Where do you start investigating? And how do I know it within my heart? The Upanishad goes there. That will take half a dozen lectures. It's there after that. It literally take half a dozen lectures. And the third question, what is the highest? For the sake of completion, let me just mention that. So ashnute sarvan kaman saha brahmana vipashchiteti. The fulfillment of all your desires. Which desires? Anything that you might have desired, anything that you have desired and forgotten, anything that you might possibly desire, anything that anybody ever has desired, all of that you get immediately, all at once, when you realize Brahman. And they are not exaggerating, they mean it. Not quite in the way you think it would be. You think that okay, so I'll get that mansion on the Pacific coast, and I'll get the latest iPhone and the Tesla car, and win the lottery, and all of that together? No, something more than that. You become one with everything. Anything that ever existed, will exist, exists now, all of that you become one. Or even more precisely, all of that becomes one with you. Nothing is there you feel. So, is there time to tell the story of the princess of Kashi?
Yes.
But there's a question, I don't know. Okay, we'll come back to you. You already asked a question, so we'll come back to you. Yeah, you had a question. Let's ask the question. Let's see if it's related to the princess of Kashi. There's a story I want to tell. Yeah.
Thank you, Swamiji. My name is Krishna. So may not be articulating the question right, but maybe you can correct it. So there are two streams. One stream, the one which you see like knowing, like to know what Brahman is, and another aspect, another stream, like how to know the Brahman. Like we know, like this is the light, how the light works. Most of us we know like this light, how was the electricity comes, amplifies. We know like it's getting like streamed on YouTube, like it gets like captured, creates a frames, it gets like
True.
buffered, and
We understand.
goes to the cloud and goes to the stream. Now I see like know your comments, like how much time should we put in, like knowing the Brahman and like understanding the concept of Brahman, and like how to search the
Yes.
practical aspect of it, like actually doing the steps in life.
All right. You're asking a practical question. First of all, you're already in the process. In Vedanta, they say the process is Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. You hear and study these truths, number one, systematically. Number two, think deeply about it. Number three, you meditate upon what you have heard and thought about. I'm using these words very carefully. The study, hearing and the study is essential. You say, I have to meditate, so let me jump ahead. I will not hear or study. I will not think about it. I just meditate about it. It will not work. It's no more than a person who wants to learn physics and goes to UCSD. And so he has to go to UCSD, he has to get the textbook, he has to attend the professor's classes, then he has to think about what he has heard in the classes, then really concentrate, and then he gets it. But if he says that, okay, I have to concentrate, then I'll get it. So I will not go to class, I will not read the book, I will not think about it, I just sit quietly and then I'll get physics. He will not. So, the study, the thinking, and the meditation. This is the basic idea, Shravana, Manana, and Nididhyasana. But it's very important to know how to relate the rest of our practices to that. You see, they are not separate. The temple and the deity and the puja and the singing and the selfless work and the love for our neighbor, they are not dissociated practices. This is not something else. They all build towards it. We don't have time to explain how it all builds towards that, but I can. And it's good to know how all our individual spiritual practices are connected to this. Here we are talking about the peak of Mount Everest, but we got to start at the base camp. If you have lucky enough to have a guru like Ramakrishna, he can take you in a helicopter and put you there. But even there, as he said, if you're not ready, you're going to perish from the cold there. So we have to start from the base camp, and all of it is necessary. Someone like Adi Shankaracharya, the greatest non-dualist, he gives full importance to Nishkama Karma, selfless service, full importance to worship and love of God and bhakti. So many beautiful hymns he wrote about bhakti. And then he comes to meditation and finally knowledge. So practically, you're already in the process. When you have started coming here and giving time and attending the class, you study and you, just to put it briefly, have these 4 practices in life. Most of us, we already have it. You just have to check yes. One is the practice of knowledge, which we are doing here. Hearing, thinking, meditating upon the truths. 1. Number 2, meditation on God. I cannot overstate the importance of this. So why? This is great. It is. But when it comes to what's the American phrase? When the rubber hits the road? When it comes to time to walk the talk, you'll find this is very far from our lives. One Swami, very senior Swami in the Himalayas told me, After a lot of Advaitic discussion on non-dualism, he says in a very plaintive voice in Hindi, सच्चाई का स्वीकार करना सीखो. Learn to acknowledge the truth of your own life. Learn to acknowledge the truth of your own life. You're searching for reality. How can you search in delusion? Start with our own lives. Let us see where we are. There's nothing to be afraid of, nothing to be ashamed of, nothing to feel dispirited about. You are Brahman. The problems are in the body and the mind. And they can be tackled and they will be tackled. If you don't tackle it now, you will tackle it in your next life. Swami Vivekananda puts it beautifully. He says, take your time. Take your time. There's no hurry about it. Only it will be life after life after life. Take your time. So once I acknowledge the truth that my mind is scattered, my mind is full of desires, I am selfish. All right, let's start working upon that. Clear up the selfishness with unselfish work. Do work for others. After all, I want to realize Brahman. The goal is there in front of me. So unselfish work, karma yoga. Devotion to God, bhakti yoga. Meditation, raja yoga. Then you will find automatically these studies are no longer philosophical. They become live. They become just, it will feel like this guy is just, the Upanishad is just repeating the truth back to me. Just telling me something like the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. Just telling me that my name is, just as my name is Swami Sarvapriyananda, in the same way I am Brahman. Even more so. So it will become like that. Before that, it's something it's a clever philosophy. After that, it becomes reality. Yeah. All right. We have.
There's one question that came from Canada. Maybe
Yes.
I'll read it to you. The question is, this is Thomas. My question is, if we are not able to see consciousness, will we be able to see consciousness with God? If we are not able to see consciousness, will we be able to see consciousness with God?
Well, Thomas, it's a good question. Let me see if I've understood it correctly. You cannot see consciousness, but you can be and you are already consciousness. The idea is to shift the I from the body-mind to the consciousness which you already are. That's the idea. But what's the role of God? Yes, you are right. If I've understood your question correctly, I would respond to this question in this way. What is the role of God in Vedanta? You see, in the world outside, in the body, mind and external world, the forms presented by Maya usually distract us from our true nature. They involve us in the world. But there are some forms which we call divine forms, the conception of God as Father, as Mother, the divine names and forms. They do not hide the reality. Rather, if you concentrate on that, focus on that and love God in that way, they will slowly, not directly, indirectly take you back to what you really are. So yes, we do not see consciousness directly, but the only way we can see consciousness is through the divine names and forms of God. But ultimately, the aim is also not to see consciousness in that way. The aim is to realize that you are that pure consciousness.
If we add once, let's say one word more.
Yes.
If we add the word to see consciousness with God's grace.
Yes.
What is grace? Does grace play any role here, or does
Okay.
grace have any factor in
All
this?
right. Grace is a word from bhakti, right? And there is an analog in Jnana also. In fact, one of the Upanishads says, the Katha Upanishad says, you cannot realize this Atman by studying a lot. Na bahuna shrutena. Na medhaya. You cannot realize this Atman by intellect, because it is not what the intellect can reveal. It is what is revealed by the intellect is revealed by it. So intellect cannot reveal it. Intellect is revealed by that. So you cannot be revealed by a sharp intellect. But the exact translation is Yame Vesha Vrinute. Whoever this Atman chooses, to him alone it reveals itself. Now what does it mean? Does the pure consciousness choose something? That sounds like religion talk. There's a philosophical explanation to it. what we can do, to put it very briefly, what we can do, we can study, we can think, we can meditate. At one point, not through our studying, thinking and meditating, but by itself it becomes clear. That is what is meant by grace in the path of knowledge. So, by grace in the path of knowledge is that not by our own efforts. Our own efforts are absolutely necessary, but the ultimate realization does not come because you attended a lot of Vedanta talks, or you meditated, or you thought a lot, or you wrote Vedanta books, not because of that. Clearly the Upanishad says you cannot do it that way. But those are all necessary to keep you in the state, to keep us in the state of readiness where our own self reveals itself. That's the best they can do, but you can clearly see how it corresponds to grace. It's not by our own effort that we get any hold on God. God allows himself to be caught by us because God loves us. That's the language of devotion, of love. Should we wrap up now? The story. The story, okay. The story. All right, we'll wrap up with the story. It's a beautiful story. Yes. The question is, how would that realization fulfill all our desires? That is the question. Everything that we could have ever wanted in life, how does it fulfill our desires? The answer is in this story. Long ago, there was a king and a queen. Of course, every story begins that way. And they had a son, a prince, who was a little boy, 5 years old. And then one day in the court of the king and the queen, there was a dramatic performance. And in the dramatic performance, one of the characters was the Princess of Kashi. Kashi is a place in India, you know that. So, Princess of Kashi, that was the role. And they wanted somebody to play the Princess of Kashi who was a little girl. They couldn't find anybody, but the cute little boy was there. So the queen said, you can dress him up as a princess and he will play the role of the king, Princess of Kashi. And that was done. And he looked so cute. The queen said, draw a picture of him, a painting. And they drew. There was no way of taking a selfie at that time. So they drew this painting and they wrote it below that, the Princess of Kashi, and so on and so forth. All right. And then the years passed and the king and queen got older. The prince grew up. And 15 years later, when he was 20, one day he was exploring his father's old palace, the old rooms and all. And he comes across this storeroom and he sees this picture with a cute little girl, Princess of Kashi. And below that, the date is given 15 years ago. So she would be around, he thinks it's my age. And he falls in love with her. And he comes back up, but he cannot tell anybody. He's shy. He can't tell his father or his mother. His father scolds him, and his mother keeps on asking him, what's wrong with you? Why don't you eat? Why don't you study? Why don't you go out hunting like all other prince are supposed to do? All the princely things are supposed to. You're not doing anything. But he's too shy to tell them. Finally, inevitably, the old wise minister comes and says, what ails you, prince? Tell me. And so he mumbles that, well, the Princess of Kashi, I've fallen in love with her and I want to marry her. And I will not marry anybody else. She's the one for me. The minister says, oh, very good. Where did you see the Princess of Kashi? Oh, I haven't seen her. You haven't seen her? No, I've seen her picture. Her picture? Where did you see the picture? Well, not her picture as she is now, but as she was 15 years ago. Where did you see this picture? Something begins to jog in the memory of the minister. Where did you see this picture? In our storeroom, there's a portrait of the princess. He said, take me there. And he takes the minister down there and they open the old storeroom and they take out the big portrait and the minister dusts it off and looks closely at it, and then he looks at the prince and says, Prince, you need to sit down. Sit down. I'll tell you something. What? Well, long ago we had this dramatic performance in the court, and we needed a Princess of Kashi. We couldn't find it, and there was a cute little boy who was dressed up as the princess. There's this other person who was dressed up as the Princess of Kashi, and it's not a real Princess of Kashi. This is the person who acted as the Princess of Kashi. And then he says, well, okay, but I'll marry her, whoever she is. And then the minister says, Prince, there's no she. That thou art. You are the one who dressed up. You were a little 5-year-old boy, you were dressed up as a princess, and that's how the portrait was made, and that's why it says Princess of Kashi. There is no other Princess of Kashi, you are that. Now at that moment, the desire that the prince had for the Princess of Kashi, the desire goes away. Why does it go away? Because he married the Princess of Kashi? No. Why does it go away? Because he was frustrated, because he realized he couldn't marry the Princess of Kashi? No. It goes away because he realizes there is no such thing apart from himself. This universe is our Princess of Kashi. Swami Vivekananda says things are dead in themselves. We project life into them, then we run after them or we run away from them. They are nothing in themselves. We don't realize that. It is the Atman itself, the pure consciousness itself, which throws itself out as this universe and then identifies with a particular body and mind and then runs after certain things and runs away from other things. This whole universe is the Princess of Kashi. When we realize Brahman, we realize there is nothing in this universe apart from me. I'm one with everything that exists, ever will exist, whatever existed. And that is liberation. That's when the individual soul wandering from life to life, from birth to death, stops that wandering, stops this limited journey. Journey as a limited being, stops it because it becomes the infinite, becomes the ocean. It stops traveling as a wave, it becomes the entire ocean. Or it was the ocean, it realizes itself as the ocean. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Shri Ram Krishna Arpanamastu. Okay, thank you.